Hi, Scott.
Hey, Dean.
Okay, so Scott, hypothetical. We've started a 1 year engagement. You're the fractional CMO. Today's day one. Let's talk about, after you tell folks who you are, let's talk about what a fractional CMO is and does in that first 90 days.
All
Who are
right.
you?
I'm Scott Burgess. I'm a fractional CMO. I work with early stage SaaS startups. My clients are learning to walk with their marketing and even sometimes learning to crawl, but I set everything up for them. And because they're early stage firms, I'm also rolling up my sleeves and I'm doing the marketing work. So I'm not just doing strategy, I'm actually doing
Okay.
some other stuff besides high level stuff.
So what is a fractional CMO, Scott? And what does one of those people do in the first 90 days of an engagement?
Yeah, so a fractional CMO is essentially just someone who comes in with high level strategy, high level leadership skills, and they come in and work part time in a business. And it helps save that business money because a lot of these companies, for example, I work with startups, they
Right.
can't afford a full time CMO. So they do get that same high, great value, but at a much lower price and able to run a little bit faster. For me, though, coming in those first 90 days is a little bit different than other CMOs I've talked to. So I
Mhm.
work with early stage SaaS startups in particular. And I come in, and those first 90 days are really getting everything going. So for me, it's all about the foundational stuff. For example, making sure their messaging and brand positioning are correct, making
Right.
sure that their marketing machine is going. The first 6 to 8 weeks are really all about getting to know the client. And there's a lot of discovery work that goes into here, from understanding who they are, what they do, and then for the final 4 weeks, that's where I really start working more on the strategy and really start trying to make all the changes that we found during the first part of it.
Okay. And Carolyn, hi. How are you?
Hey, Dean. I'm great. How you doing?
Good, thank you. So, Carolyn, same situation. Day one, 90 days. We're going to talk about the first, Q1 of that, whenever it falls in the year, right? So, like, what do you do, or what problems do you go looking for? What problems do you normally see in the, even if the client doesn't see them typically, in the first 90 days of that kind of
Yeah,
engagement?
yeah.
Oh, and let folks know who you are.
Yeah, all right. So I am Carolyn Crandall. I have been a person in the high tech world for, I don't know, 30 some odd years. And so I've had the really great fortune of seeing some of the fastest growing companies grow and work inside them and help
Mhm.
make that happen. And so it's really neat for me because I have an opportunity to work with a lot of different stage companies. I particularly like early stage, kind of the
Mhm.
earlier the better right now for the things that I do. And it's because they have great ideas, but they don't know what to do with them. And on your question about getting started and what is a fractional CMO, I find fractional CMO is probably one of the least understood terms out there. And people are like, well, what are you? Are you an interim CMO? Are you a
Right.
consultant? Are you an advisor? Are you an operational person? And I think in many cases, it depends upon what they need. Right. And are they just getting started and needing messaging and positioning, or as many that have done the initial launch go, oh my gosh, I've got to create demand and figure out market fit. And so a lot of work is done around that. And then sometimes it's operations, right? They need to be able to set the foundation and scale. So to your question about the first 100 days, the first thing, regardless of how your conversation started about what they wanted to do, you got to
Right.
find out what's on their mind right at that moment, right? Because it is remarkable how often it changes. That I want you to come in and be very strategic, then, oh my gosh, we have this thing going on right now, I really need help, and kind of things take a about face or a turn. And so to make sure that you're successful in meeting the objectives is first do an alignment meeting, right? What are we trying to accomplish, and talk in outcomes, right? And,
Right.
and align the expectations, because if your view of the outcome is different than the CEO's view or the CMO that you might be supporting, then get alignment, because if you don't, you're never going to be successful in the end. And then set the expectation that certain things take time, right? So don't pluck the seed too fast, and at the same time course correct fast if you don't know. And so a lot of it is just getting the right expectations started, and then having a plan and milestones. A lot of times I'll come in and find out that, the early stage, it's the cowboys, the Wild West. And so they need a little bit of structure and discipline. So also making sure that the company can execute on the strategy and the plans that you put with them. So final thought on that is simply just a balance, right? A lot of them will bring in a fractional for strategy, but they really need operational, and it's finding that right balance too, that you help them in both places. And so again, 100-day plan, figure out what that plan is, your strategy, how you're going to get there, what the outcomes are, and then keep track along the way. Give progress reports so that they know what you're working on. And if things change along the way, you're aligning on that course correction before the end stage comes into play.
Right. All right. Well, let's imagine then, let's change perspectives for a second, and not from the CMO, but the CEO, right? So you're talking to the CEO, or let's say I'm the client's CEO. And I'm going to have you for a year. I probably had to like lobby a bit to get budget, for that kind of spend to bring in a fractional CMO over and above the company's marketing budget anyway. It's like, how am I going to get maximum? Like, how am I going to squeeze like every penny of worth out of the 1 year that I have with my fractional CMO?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to, again, the situation of, are you coming in as an interim CMO in which you're building the plan?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to do that balance of an operational versus a strategic, and align on those outcomes. Now, alternatively, if they have a CMO function and they're stuck, right, they don't know how to get to that next level of growth, then it's about aligning on the strategy and
Right.
really helping them understand the differences between somebody that you work with strategically, which the outcomes generally tend to be a little bit longer, right, before you see the ultimate effect, and the very short term things, which is, I need something stood up on the website, or I need a campaign launched, or I need this event taken care of in a really effective way. But what does the horizon look like? And then make sure it can be defined, because if you exit after a year of working with that CEO and they can't quantify how you moved the needle, then they're going to look at it and feel disappointed. The other thing I always tend to do is overachieve a little bit, right? So if I want the outcomes to be achievable, not sandbag, but achievable, is always kind of give them a little bit of, that cherry on the top, right? Things that they didn't expect along the way, so that when they look at their scorecard of what does success look like, they go, well, I got all of that, plus I got these extra things. And so, defining what they are, again, goes back to that conversation of what's important to the CEO. And the leadership team is the last thing I'll mention, is it's not just about pleasing the CEO, it's how you fit in with the leadership team and how you mobilize the whole organization, because that's where a lot of CMOs fail, is they try to do things in silos. But a CMO, in my mind, their role, fractional or not, is to mobilize the whole organization around the initiatives and get everybody pulling on the rope together. So don't forget about that impact and changing the culture and the dynamics of the leadership team. And the CEO will value that a lot as well.
All right. No, that's good. Scott, I want to flip that question around and ask it a different way. All right. So how does a CEO or a company, how do they waste the money that they've put aside and spent on a fractional CMO? Like, what did they do or not do that sort of nullified the effects or impact that CMO could have had?
One of the things I've seen, so there are bad clients out there, and I've been unfortunate. The majority of my clients have been amazing. I had this one client that didn't trust in the process. They didn't have open communication. They weren't
Right.
responsive. So that first 6 weeks is extremely important for me, because it's where I learned everything about a company. So that's where I'm doing
Mhm.
all my discovery, and it's where I'm reviewing the marketing. I'm talking to all the other executives. I'm talking to people lower down. I'm talking to everyone, because I'm trying to get a good understanding of what's going on. And unfortunately, some clients don't see that as valuable. They don't see that all the questions I'm asking have value, or they'll send me to someone lower down. And it's important to always give me that information, because the slower we get through that early part, the longer everything else is going to take.
Right.
So for me, I'm lucky that I'm usually only working with the CEO or maybe some of the founding team as early stage SaaS startups. So I'm extremely lucky that almost everyone I talk to does believe in my process. They trust in it. They see that it's worked. I've advised over 50 startups on all this, and they see that I have the results to back it up. But they also know that things don't just happen overnight. They know that timelines are going to take longer than we expect them to. They understand that overall marketing just takes time. There's no true one tactic or strategy that's going to drive the needle home and increase revenue right away. It takes time to build everything out, especially
Yeah.
starting out brand new. So for me, people who waste the money are people who don't go with the process, and just slow things down, because that first 6 weeks is extremely important for me. You have to think, when you come into an actual full-time CMO role, you're probably taking 1 to 3 months to get it up to speed before you really get your footing. As a fractional CMO, you don't have that time. You have weeks to get up to speed in order to start producing results and moving the needle forward.
It sounds like the kind of people who freak out when the price of their stocks goes down, like as an investor. So they sell, and then when it goes up, they buy, and so they're always selling low and buying high, and then they're in a worse situation than if they just didn't invest at all, right?
Exactly.
All right then. All right, so let's talk about. I mean, in a lot of cases for both of you, right? It's like you're in early stage companies. And but sometimes there's a marketing team, or one or two people, at least there's something already in place, right? So as the CMO coming in, right, how's that marketing team going to be better, or at least different, at the end of your year with them than they were on day one?
Mhm.
The
Well,
team as a whole.
Okay. The majority of my clients actually don't even have a marketing team
Right.
yet.
Yeah.
They might have a few freelancers they're working with here and there, or maybe they have someone who's very extremely junior, just trying to move things along. So
Mhm.
the first thing I do is, once we get everything going and we have the budget, we do hire out a team to help me to move the needle faster.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, I do have had some clients that have had marketing teams, but they've been extremely fragmented because there's been no one running them. They've been working directly with the CEO. The
Right.
CEO is pulled in every direction, so they don't have the time to really sit down and manage and make sure they're doing the right things. So I'm going to bring them all together into a cohesive unit. We're going to make sure that there's lots of talking going on, that they understand what's going on throughout the whole entire company, because marketing is one of the few departments that touches almost every aspect of the company. And we're just going to make sure that we can move faster because we have all the systems in place, we have all the organization in place, we have all the processes in place. So at the end of it, you just see more structure and a marketing team that really just works together way better.
Carolyn, what do you think? How does the marketing team or the marketing function in the company improve or change after a year of having a fractional CMO in there messing around?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's three scenarios, right? You come in and there's nothing, right? So
Yeah.
you lay the foundation down, and that one's a little bit easier to build because there's nothing there you have to assess, right? What's working, what's not working, that start, stop, continue. And you can build it, and then seeing what's changed is very easy because all of a sudden they have a marketing automation platform, they have integration with the CRM system, they got a website that is doing lead gen, and they've got inbound leads coming in. So that is all pretty quantifiable if it's just that type of work. And I think that sometimes you can't do it alone, or it doesn't make sense to do it as the fractional CMO because there are other resources you could hire, like other small startup agencies or agencies that support small startups that will come in and help do a lot of that, and be able to really back you up so that you can still maintain the strategy and help them really assess that market fit, which is what they really need. And so there's a deep dive in that messaging and positioning. And I think that's something you can quantify and look back a year from, and you go, okay, this is where we started, and this is what our presentation looked like, and this is where we're coming out of the year. And we're starting to see what messaging resonates and having validation of those things. Now, if I change gears to the next, which is you've got some marketing organization that is in place and they have been reporting to the CEO or a product team, and they generally are elated to have a fractional CMO come in, especially somebody they can learn from. And so I've really tried to make it purpose to give back, right? I'm not here to just manage their tasks, but I want to make them better, like teach them how to do the next realm of activities, think more comprehensively about the things that they're doing and get a better result. And then also be able to prove their value, which is sometimes hard in marketing. And a lot of times the more junior people don't know how to advocate for themselves and stand up. So give them the tools so that they can show their success and be able to know how to share that throughout the company in a successful way. And then I'll give you the third scenario, which is a team that is maybe gone through a lot of turmoil. There's been restructuring. Maybe the CMO was part of a riff, and they're trying to cut back expenses. And that's hard because it's a lot of letting the team be heard, right?
Yeah.
I understand this is hard, this is tough, but you guys are the fighters, the survivors. So let's talk about and here's a safe room, right? What's working, what's not working, What are the barriers? What could we change the most to help make you more successful? What are the cultural dynamics? Is there a good relationship with sales? Not, where are they coming from? And then really just help them get that place at the table, which they may not have had before, given either friction with the prior CMO and the CEO, or maybe just a lack of regard for what they were doing, or maybe lack of results so that they didn't have the respect to the rest of the organization. So how do you right that ship and get them going forward? And so at the end, the teams come back feeling more elated. They're better, they're stronger, they're more respected. And then the company views them differently because they're showing their contribution and it's measurable, and just the whole culture around marketing changes in the company. And so that helps them all.
Right. Let's talk about the most junior person on that marketing team, right? They're like 22, 23, right out of college. It's the first full-time job they've ever had, and it happens to be in marketing, right? If you were going to talk to that person, or like that person was your niece or nephew or your best friend's kid, right? And they say, "Oh, you should talk to Carolyn. Like she knows, she's used to running these kind of organizations." What advice would you give that like young person? They've got their whole career in marketing ahead of them. They're going to have a fractional CMO like access to one for a year. What would you advise them to do, or try to learn, or try to avoid, or questions to ask?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, when I was at Ativo Networks, seed startup, very early company, we hired everybody straight out of college. So my whole team was all college kids, and they didn't know. And I think it's actually a really fun time to bring them in, because what they want is they're hungry. They want to learn. They want a purpose. They feel very confident coming out of their education that they're ready to conquer the world. And so you need to give them meaningful projects with, training wheels to get them going. But what they need to hear is the opportunity for them, right? Because they're very, very purpose driven in this generation. And so why is the work that I'm doing going to matter? And again, there's personality types, but also how am I going to be given the independence to go learn and thrive and let my voice be heard? Because it's very important for them to have their voice be heard. So structure that, but at the same time, be able to give them the coaching that, look, yes, you see the bright and shiny star, but here's my battle scars, like from learn from those, and here's how you can make it better. So I think that helps a lot of the graduates coming in. And then the last thing I will say is, a lot of kids have come into an area where a lot of things have been given to them. Like the generation before them worked really hard, maybe too hard in some ways, to raise money and make their lives easy. It's not a cakewalk, especially if you go into a startup. Be prepared to work. And if you don't want to work really hard at a startup, don't join a startup, right? Join a bigger company that has processes and infrastructure and predictability, because in a startup, you don't. And so if you go, it's 5:00, I got to go home, and there's something major that has to be done for marketing, a press release is going out, and it's got to get posted on the website, and that's your job. The clock doesn't stop, right? You sign up for a commitment to that company that may disrupt, and be outside of the work hours, but that's what you sign up for in a startup. So my feedback to people is if you do this, your side of the equation is you got to make the commitment. And if you're not ready to do it, don't join a startup, because it's all hands on deck, and the clock doesn't really stop when you work at a startup. Nights, weekends, it's just part of what happens. And generally good CEOs will go, take a rest or a break or extra time at a different point in time. But when you need to be there, be prepared. That's what you're signing up for.
I've worked in 2 in my career, and like everybody should have to go through the startup experience at least once, like, just to see how the sausage is not just made, but like invented.
Yeah, but you'll learn so much. You'll learn so much at a startup.
Yeah. So Scott, I'm going to ask this question in a slightly different Star Trek kind of way, which is to say, imagine that there's been some sort of split, and now there's Scott, you, and there's another Scott. It's also you, but he's 22. What does older Scott say to younger Scott to take advantage of the situation of having old Scott, no offense, but old Scott, right? Access to old Scott for a year. What advice do you give young Scott?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say to just don't be afraid to ask questions. That I think that's very, very important. So actually, before I went to marketing, I have a teaching background, so I love teaching others and helping people grow. But I'm very hands off. Like I'm not going to be the person standing over your shoulder telling you how to do everything. I want you to also learn and figure out on your own. So just don't be afraid to ask questions with people higher up. Don't be afraid to explore other roles within the department. Don't be afraid to help other people, which I've always been someone to help, but it helped me get further in my career. So always be available to help others in your department, and also be hungry to learn everything you can about marketing. I think that's very, very important, and to keep up on the times. There's marketing is always changing, technology
Mhm.
wise. Platforms are changing. Just keep up on it, and it's going to be a journey. It's going to be a long journey, and you're going to learn that marketing is always one of the first things to get cut in your career. So don't. And companies, when they go through downturns, they tend to cut marketing. So don't be afraid to do stuff on your own as well as you're growing and learning, and learn from older self, right? Learn from me,
Yeah.
because it's going to help you go a little further.
Someone on another episode around this kind of topic had a great line, I think, which was, if you don't know, ask. Next week, you'll still remember the answer, but no one will remember that you asked the question. That
That's
was
a great
pretty
quote.
good, right? No one will remember that you didn't know at one point, but you'll still remember that you know what you now need to know. Okay, Scott. So, okay, here's my question. There are obviously easier ways to make a living than to be a fractional CMO, right? There are careers that have far less frustration built in than being a fractional CMO. Like, why do this job? Come on, man.
Mm, that's a good question. I decided to go this route just because I was fed up with being in full time roles. I'd
Right.
experienced a lot of bad culture with some startups I had, and I'd also been burned several times with layoffs unexpectedly. And I decided, you know what, I'm never going to put myself back in that situation where I'm not in control, where
Yep.
someone else is controlling the boat, because it has burned me several times in my career. Marketing is always the first to get cut when there's a downturn, which is horrible because the companies that double down on it actually see a lot more growth.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of companies just don't see the value behind it when they're struggling financially. So it's a complicated journey, but the reason fractional works for me is I get to touch a lot of different companies. I get to work a little bit in each company, and I get to have choices. I don't have to be stuck doing the same thing every single day. Every
Right.
client I work with is at a different stage of their journey, so it makes it exciting. It's fun. Yes, it's a lot of work. I'm working harder than I ever worked at any other startups I worked at full time, but it's on my terms. And to me, that freedom is worth everything for me. And also building my personal brand. Since I left full time work, my personal brand has been growing and growing and growing. And
Yeah.
that has helped land speaking engagements. It's helped me go to conferences. It's helped me so much more in my career than being full time, where all you're focused on is that. So fractional is a lot of work, but the end result is worth it. And ultimately, you can make a lot more money working fractionally.
Right. Carolyn, how about you? Why'd you
Yeah,
sign up for this madness?
I know. I have days I wonder myself.
Me too.
But it was interesting. I was a little bit on the borderline of, should I retire? And I think a lot of people go through that. However, they get to the point of a job shift or change they hadn't planned, or maybe there was an exit, right? In the company, and all of a sudden they take their leave and go. Um, and I just, honestly, I was going to take a little semi vacation and maybe ride for a year and not do anything. And fortunately, I have some great relationships with folks, and they found out I
Mhm.
was available. And so it started off with advisory. And then it became more, hey, can you do this now more part
Right.
time? And then another gig for an interim CMO, and things just started to pop up. And so I think I was fortunate that it kind of came to me, which I know that's not typical for a lot of people. A lot of people don't have that network or haven't been at the C level before.
Right.
I think it does help immensely if you've been a CMO before to be a fractional CMO. You are being hired as the expert, and if you haven't had that expertise, it's hard to represent in that way. I find that sometimes the misuse of the fractional CMO term, it's if you're really not able to operate at that strategic level, calling yourself a fractional can confuse some of the the CEOs and what to really expect from those roles. And it could set you up to fail too, right? If they think you can do more than you can. Um, Not saying you shouldn't go for things. Most of the jobs I've taken in my earlier parts of my career scared the hell out of me.
Oh yeah.
Like I had 4 out of 5 things in the job, and I was like, this one scares me. But then I found people who were experts in it, helped them educate me, and then I went forward. Which I have to say, I love the CMO, the fractional CMO, and the CMO community. They are so helpful to
Right.
new fractionals coming in, to others that just wants and needs and help and feedback, and it's a great community. And I think that's probably what helped kind of seal me into saying, I think I actually really enjoy this. I like the diversity of the different companies and the things they're going through and the constant change, because if you don't like change, this is not good for you.
No.
But if you like dynamic environments and change, it's a lot of fun. And it's a great community. I really do love the community that's out there for CMOs and how they really help each other.
All right. Okay, so Carolyn, we have to wrap up. Who should contact you these days, and how should they do it? What's your preferred contact method?
Yep. So I have my site. Articulate.com is my website, or LinkedIn is always a great place to reach out. I tend to work, like I said, with early stage companies. My background is really diverse. And so I have been a CMO for a very long time. I've been in high tech for a very long time. I am a technology person by heart. So a lot of folks like me because of my technical orientation. And it really helps if you've got messaging and positioning, or you're bringing a company out from stealth. That's a great opportunity to bring me in. And also, if you're challenged, like demand gen's changed a lot, and there's a lot of different AI tools that are out there, and you're just confused going, I don't know, of the 10,000 new AI tools that have popped up, like, what do I pick and what do I do with them and what should I expect for results? And I've done a lot of study over the last probably about a year of all the different AI tools that are out there for marketing infrastructure. And if you need any help sorting through that as well, I can come in and just give you an overview of how and what things, pros, cons, what to look out for. So it's kind of a diverse set of things. And then the last area I'd say is just channel, right? If you're trying to build out your channel, I started my roots in channels. So always there's a soft spot in my heart. So if you need a little help with channel partnerships and strategy, I can jump in and do some things there as well.
Scott, how about you? Who should contact you?
Yeah.
And how?
Yeah, so I'm working mainly with early stage SaaS startups, but I am working more with some later stage ones and ones that do have more funding.
Right.
Just trying to grow my base across all different aspects of it, because I love working with startups, and they can find me on my website or on LinkedIn as well.
Every time someone says funding because of my name, I hear funding, and it's like, okay, and then I have to make the correction. It's like a glitch in my head, I think. All right, well, Scott, thanks so much for being here, man. It was great to see you, and thank you, Carolyn, as well. Great to see you, and thanks everyone. And you're probably watching this on a clip if I know anything about my own stats. So I hope you enjoyed the clip. We'll get to you soon.